If you think you know what to expect from Shovel Knight Specter of Torment, think again. No, really. After devouring Plague of Shadows, Shovel Knight's first major content update released back in September 2015, I thought I knew what to expect. Mostly the same overall game but with remixed level designs, wrapped in a new story and starring a brand new playable character. That's what Plague of Shadows was, after all. Let me be clear, that's not what Specter of Torment is. Specter of Torment, the second of 3 planned DLC campaigns starring key boss characters from the Order of No Quarter, may as well be a totally new game. Not only does Specter Knight play completely differently from both Shovel Knight and Plague Knight before him, his stages and boss fights are wildly varied as well, to the point that every level in the game looks, sounds, and feels totally different from before. The amount of work that developer Yacht Club Games has done to set Specter of Torment apart from Plague of Shadows in terms of the amount of original content on display is staggering and really can't be understated. Brand new and rearranged music, redrawn stage backgrounds, new enemies and gimmicks, Specter of Torment has it all, and that's just the beginning. Whereas Plague of Shadows played out kind of like an alternate reality version of the events that happened in Shovel Knight's story, Specter of Torment is being billed as an official prequel to the original game. It's an apt description too. As Specter Knight, you literally take part in the creation of the Order of No Quarter that served as Shovel Knight's foils in the original game, while piecing together Specter Knight's own tragic past. Aside from a couple of late-game leaps in logic that left me scratching my head as to the motivations of certain characters, the story is elegantly told and decidedly grim and macabre in tone. Indeed, just like Specter Knight himself. Yacht Club have once again proven themselves master storytellers here, deftly utilizing 8-bit sounds and visuals to tell a tale that's every bit as touching and poignant as anything you'd see in a AAA game, all without the need for a single polygon or even a second of voice acting. The game's final scene in particular really hits home, acting as a perfect bookend to Specter of Torment's overall theme and leading directly into the event of the original Shovel Knight. This is elegant, subtle world-building at its finest, with characters we thought we knew getting reintroduced and recontextualized in exciting new ways, and it always feels organic, never forced. And despite Specter of Torment's overall darker tone, the goofy charm and overall whimsy that have come to be associated with Shovel Knight in general are on full display here as well. I mean, there's an item you can get that serves no other function other than to let you make Specter Knight strike a cool pose whenever you want. You can't get much more Shovel Knight than that. But enough about the story, characters, and tone. This is a video game after all, and none of that means a whit if the game part doesn't pass muster. Fortunately, Specter of Torment is an absolute joy to play, feeling more like the Mega Man X or Zero to Shovel Knight's Mega Man. Whereas Shovel Knight and Plague Knight always felt like they demanded a more methodical approach to challenging situations, Specter Knight's style emphasizes mobility and forward momentum at all times. This is achieved by anchoring Specter of Torment's incredibly tight level designs around 2 abilities that are unique to Specter Knight alone. First of all, Specter Knight can temporarily run along most vertical surfaces and jump off most walls, and as you might expect, that alone has enabled Yacht Club to approach Shovel Knight's level design from a totally new perspective. Suddenly, walls aren't just obstacles or barriers, they play an active role in stage traversal and you're forced to start considering them accordingly. Working in concert with this is Specter Knight's second big ability, a mid-air dash slash with his scythe that sees Specter Knight automatically locking on to certain nearby targets and lurching forward in a diagonal slash. It's a little hard to explain in words, but it kind of reminds me of Sonic's homing attack, except a version that always works like it's supposed to and never leads to unintentional deaths. Anchoring an entire game around this ability could have been disastrous in less capable hands, but Yacht Club unsurprisingly managed to make it and Specter Knight's movement in general quickly feel second nature. As you get a sense for how Specter Knight plays, you begin to see how Specter of Torment's gameplay emphasizes flow more than previous campaigns as you start stringing together multiple wall runs, wall jumps, and dash slashes, often alternating between them on the fly. And once these mechanics totally click for you, Specter of Torment rewards you with an utterly sublime gameplay experience. Specter Knight can also cash in the red skulls hidden throughout each stage to acquire curios, which are essentially Shovel Knight's relics with a fancy new name. While it can be fun to experiment with curios to see how they can complement Specter Knight's base abilities, and it's true that several of them are situationally useful, I feel that their implementation leaves something to be desired. Compared to Shovel Knight and especially Plague Knight's wide assortment of upgrades and special items that you can choose to prioritize buying based on your playstyle, curios simply become available gradually and seemingly at random. And not only that, but when shopping for curios, I was almost never able to choose between more than 2 of them at any given time, when I had a choice at all, and I usually didn't. So in this way, upgrading Specter Knight and adding to his repertoire of abilities feels significantly more linear and perhaps less rewarding than in prior campaigns. But that's a minor complaint in the grand scheme of things, and Specter of Torment is otherwise an incredibly well-oiled machine. And much like fellow Nintendo Switch launch title The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, it also wants you to die, repeatedly. Considering Shovel Knight is one of the easier retro-themed platformers out there and Plague of Shadows is only slightly harder, the fact that Specter of Torment sometimes presents a stiff challenge is genuinely surprising. Now to be clear, not one of my deaths was unfair and the difficulty never feels oppressive, but the increased challenge factor is worth noting for those who might have been lulled into a false sense of security by the series' relative lack of difficulty thus far. Now, while I wouldn't say the increased challenge has anything to do with this, I should mention that as a 2D game, Specter of Torment is best played with the Switch Pro Controller, and it isn't even close. I spent plenty of time playing Specter of Torment in various Switch configurations, TV mode with the Switch Pro Controller and the Joy-Con grip, handheld mode, tabletop mode holding both Joy-Con vertically, and tabletop mode holding one Joy-Con sideways. Specter of Torment can be played well enough in the latter four configurations, but the tiny analog nub and separated face buttons on the Joy-Con just can't cut it compared to a good old D-pad, which makes a truly massive difference when playing Specter of Torment. Honestly, it's like night and day. I do want to stress, however, that Specter of Torment looks fantastic on the Switch's screen in handheld mode, and that it's clear Yacht Club did the best they could with what they had. It's not their fault the Switch doesn't come equipped with a traditional D-pad after all, and I foresee this continuing to be an issue with 2D games on the Switch until Nintendo releases a Joy-Con variant that's equipped with a D-pad. Let's talk a bit about Specter of Torment's soundtrack, and I really do mean a bit because there honestly isn't much to say. It's stupendous, and even though it's only March, it's an early contender for Soundtrack of the Year. Returning composer Jake Kaufman has really outdone himself here, blessing us with sumptuous rearrangements of every Order of No Quarter stage theme alongside all new tunes, the vast majority of which hit the mark without fail. At this point, Kaufman has established without a doubt that there's simply no one better when it comes to composing catchy, punchy chiptune soundtracks in that signature Mega Man and Castlevania style of powerful melody lines and crunchy bass. Specter of Torment's soundtrack really is that excellent. And of course, Specter of Torment excels in the visual department as well, with the game's large, chunky sprites really popping against the lush pixel art backgrounds. Meanwhile, Shovel Knight's world was already well populated with creative, charmingly whimsical characters, and the new faces you'll meet in Specter of Torment only add to that pedigree. And if you keep your eyes open, you'll start to notice all the loving little details Yacht Club has included for particularly eagle-eyed players. Whether it's an especially well-animated background element or the care taken in the way certain NPCs move, Specter of Torment is just slathered in Yacht Club's usual coat of polish. And ultimately, that's just true of Shovel Knight Specter of Torment in general. It's yet another well-polished gem in Yacht Club's growing library of hits and an absolute pleasure to experience. I love it. If you have even a passing interest in 2D platformers or the kind of neo-retro gaming vibe that Shovel Knight embodies, you absolutely must play Specter of Torment, not to mention the original Shovel Knight campaign and Plague of Shadows. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on social media. You can find all the links you need in the video description below. Otherwise, keep it on GameXplain for more on Shovel Knight, including the still upcoming King Knight campaign, and all things gaming.